I'd actually like to begin with a poem from the saint poet Kabir, who Master Paramhansa Yogananda actually said was an incarnation of the soul that was or is Lahiri Mahashaya. And so we can sort of feel that underlying vibration of one of our masters in these words as we listen, and then I'll sort of connect it to what we're talking about today. I thought it was very beautiful. Between the poles of the conscious and the unconscious, there has the mind made a swing. Thereon hang all beings and all worlds. And that swing never ceases its sway. Millions of beings are there. The sun and the moon in their courses are there. Millions of ages pass, and the swing goes on. All swing, the sky and the earth, and the air and the water, and the Lord himself taking form. And the sight of this has made Kabir a servant. So I also invite all of you who feel so inclined to, if you feel to, turn on your cameras if you'd like, so I can see you as we go into this topic. So this poem, I'll tie it in a little bit later. For now, we'll enjoy its inspiration. But on this topic of all of life being a school, all of life being the purpose of which is to learn from our experiences. There's a song that Swami Kriyananda wrote. It was actually a children's song, but as with many children's songs and things that Swamiji wrote, he applied the same level of truth to everything. He applied, it came from Master and then was manifested into whatever it was he was creating. And that can take all sorts of different forms, all the way from a book like the Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which can truly be called a scripture, all the way to a children's song, all the way to even his reading of a comedic play. He used to really enjoy reading a British playwright, P.G. Wodehouse. And his plays were, they're absurd, actually. They're hilarious. They're very funny, but they're absurd. But even then, when you listen to the recording of him reading that, you feel that same upliftment, that same level of vibration somehow, even though he's talking about some, posh British socialite not understanding what was going on in his life. And so even in the children's songs, we can find a lot of truth. And there's one song that my father used to wake me up in the morning singing, and it's called "It's Time to Go to School." And he'd wake me because it was time to go to school. And I was not an enthusiastic morning person at the time. I'm more so now. It's not maybe my strength yet, but at the time it was just terrible for me. And so he would sing me this song, and I'll hum a few bars because the last line I find particularly instructive, which is, all life is like a school. All life is like a school. It's time to learn right now. And I saw someone singing along with me, which is wonderful. So first of all, this first line, all of life is like a school. This is not obvious to everyone, but I think by the time we get onto the spiritual path, this becomes clear to us. We are now aware that there's something we need to learn, or something about life, something very core and fundamental about how this whole world works and what my role is in it that I need to learn. But this second line is what I find very beautiful, but also taken in the wrong, or in a certain light, it almost feels like a threat. It's time to learn right now, as in the time for not learning is over. We have done that. We have been on this cycle of birth and rebirth for so many times. Yoganandaji said that it takes millions of incarnations to even get to the human level, and then millions still to get to the level where you even want to know God. You're at the very final stretch by the time that you decide God is the only purpose to life, or there must be, let's say, some higher purpose to my life. And that search eventually leads us to looking around for people who look like they have figured it out. And eventually we find books written by great souls, we find music, we find podcasts, we find whatever it is. And eventually, I think everyone here has found a true guru. You found our masters, or you found your own spiritual path that feeds you in such a way that you are able to feel like you are growing, that every day, week, month, year is on some level more expansive than the last. And that's actually one of the main ways that we can measure our success on the spiritual path, you could say, is, am I growing? Not am I perfect? Not am I free already? Not do I ever get angry? Oh, I sometimes get angry, therefore I'm not growing spiritually. It's no, am I better than when I started? This has actually been a very powerful practice for me, because when you're in a challenge, when you're in an experience of life that is giving you a particularly strong fight, it doesn't always feel like we're progressing. Right? We feel like we're in the thick of it. The challenge is right here. The Maya has got us totally enmeshed, and we totally believe that this is real. Anger is justified. This person wronged me. I'm sad because this happened. Why is life unfair? Because it's right here. What we need to do is take that step back and try to learn from life's experiences rather than having them be our entire reality. And that takes a little bit of perspective, right? And now here in the ashram in Mumbai, we've been starting to practice playing football, or soccer, as my people call it. And we have a little court here, and we've been playing. A lot of the people who've been playing with us have never played before, or very, very little experience. And it's been a lot of fun to see them fall into it and gain that same enthusiasm and love for the game that I have, but also especially felt when I first played. But there's this interesting thing. There's, most of the roles in soccer are very similar. You run around and you kick the ball. But one role is a little bit different, and that is the role of the goalkeeper. And his job is to stand in the goal and to block all the shots. And if we now take this and make it into a metaphor. So our goal, let's say, is to score goals, which that's why they call it a goal. On the spiritual path, when we score a goal, we're figuring something out. We're learning something. We're getting our way to the truth. Satan, Maya, delusion, our own negative thoughts about ourselves, our own self-limiting beliefs about what this life is the goalkeeper. Now, what we have to teach these friends of ours is that if you just stand in the goal and you have the goal is pretty big, so there's a lot of open space, it's very easy to score. There's a lot of open spaces. There's a meter on the left, there's a meter on the right. It's very easy for the shooter to find an opening. But if the goalie comes forward through the magic of geometry, every step he takes forward, he's cutting off those spaces. He's making them smaller and smaller. And if the goalie is able to get to the point where he's right in front of you, you can't see the goal at all. The goal has become completely blocked from your view. And this is how Maya works with us. It gets very, very close, and then we're not able to see. Our perspective is limited. We've got blinders on, and we're unable to see the truth that the goal is actually massive. It's actually right there for us to kick a ball. He's still, or she, is still sitting way back in the goal. But we, in our lack of perspective, lack of correct perspective, we have gone into tunnel vision. We only see the goalie, even though the goalie has not done anything. The goalie is just static. It's just there. It's almost made of cardboard. But we have said, oh, the goalie is so important. Oh, he's going to block my shot. Oh, and now I'm not going to be able to do it. Now I'm not going to be able to succeed, and on and on and on. So then the whole of the spiritual path becomes, how can we view the goalie appropriately? And this comes down to, I think, tying it to how we can learn from life's experiences. And I think it's good to see all experiences as a potential for learning. Now, of course, we have had grand experiences in our lives, the moments that were so big and beautiful that it was impossible not to learn from them. I once went on a trek to a glacial lake called Satopant, and it is believed by certain lineages of Mahavatar Babaji, not our own teachings. A master has alluded to the fact that Babaji lives or has lived above Bajunat in the mountains, but he didn't specify. But certain other lineages say that he takes his residence, so to speak, or at least one of them, at this lake above Badrinath. So I went on a trek with a devotee friend of mine to this place, and it is truly one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And it's actually, incidentally, the path that is, legend has it, that the Pandavas took when they were making their final approach to heaven. And from Satopant itself, you can see what is supposedly the stairway to heaven, where Yudhisthira takes his final ascent, or almost does, as the story goes, as I recall, which is a beautiful story unto itself. But basically, this high glacial lake is considered a very holy place. And my friend and I went on this trek, and we were only there 2 or 3 days, but the combination of the disconnection from all distractions of life, leaving, my phone didn't work, there was nothing to do other than to be in this uplifting vibration, to have this goal of this lake that we were trekking towards, and so on. And after and during that trip, a number of really, what I felt were really profound lessons came to me. This idea of, once you're on this trek, you can't really just stop. Like, you can't give up. If you give up, you sit down, well, there you are. Like, there's nothing to be done. If you just sit there, you will die. Eventually, you're at least going to have to walk back. And so this idea of, as we're on the spiritual path, we cannot turn back. We actually don't even have that option. We think we do, and we think we can sit there and stubbornly, say, I'm not going to grow today. I'm not going to learn today. And we can do that for some time, but our goal has not changed, and we're just stuck here. We're going to have to continue at some point, so why not now? Another one was the idea of seeing these mountain peaks. You're here and the mountains are just soaring above you. I mean, you're right at the base of these gorgeous, bright, shiny, snow-capped peaks. And for days, every single time I saw them, it took my breath away. I felt like it was just a completely new experience of awe and majesty. And it just opened my heart, and I could feel it touching my soul. And this reminded me then of the fact that Master said that joy, Ananda, the whole journey of the spiritual path, is to find a goal that is ever new. That no matter how beautiful it is, but how many times we see it, how many times we experience it, how long we experience it, it never gets boring. It always has this power to inspire. And there were many such, you could say, revelations that felt extremely profound to me in the moment. And I think we've all had experiences like this. It's when we have something that's really dramatic that happens in our lives, it's okay, wow, that was amazing, that was inspiring, that was joyful. It's very easy to feel God's presence when we're feeling joyful, no? But most of our lives are not those experiences, no? Our lives on the outside might look a bit more mundane. We go to office, we make a meal, we eat, we play with our children or our parents, or we talk with friends, all wonderful things, but nothing so dramatic as being high in the Himalayas on the search for Mahavatar Babaji. But it is no less important to learn from these experiences as well. And when we think about life's experiences, when we think about, okay, what are the ones that I need to learn from most? Unfortunately, it's probably the challenging ones. It's the ones that hurt. It's when a friend says something that causes us pain. It's when we think we're doing the right thing, but it all goes badly and we realize we had made a mistake and now we're embarrassed and now we're suffering and all of this. And what I'd like to encourage us to do, I think this is one of the Master used this example often of the metaphor of the motion picture when he was talking about the spiritual path. And I think for us, it's helpful to think of our lives as a motion picture. And we don't even, or a movie or a TV show, whatever we have now. And we don't have to think even in grand terms, like the whole of our life. We have this birth and death in this lifetime, but we also are born every morning and we die every night when we go to bed. And while we're asleep, we're not even aware or conscious of it. It's actually a very good experience to look at the day as its own mini incarnation. And as such, we can actually think of it as its own mini film or serial. I like the example actually of the sitcom. I don't know if you call them that here, a situational comedy. They're usually short half-hour episodes and they're funny and light and you have an ensemble group of characters. Friends is a prime example. And they go through whatever adventures and hijinks they go through and they have conflicts and this and that. But by the end of the episode, somehow they've always found closure. Everything's always back to normal. They've always figured out the solution to that problem. So for us, when we approach our day, we should try to see ourselves as the protagonist, as the main character in the TV show of our day. And look around. Oh, there's the antagonist. There's the person who's going to make me angry today. There's the person who's going to make me feel fear or upset, or possibly, something less inherently negative, but something that causes that conflict, that causes that intrigue. Because how boring would our lives be if we did not have that conflict, if we did not have that intrigue? Swami Kriyananda would always say, if you're reading a book and the main character is born on the right side of town to the best parents, they had all the best education, they did all this, they got the best job immediately, met the love of their life, got married and lived a happy life, you would put that book down after 3 pages. It would be incredibly boring. And that is because our souls are actually programmed to look for our own growth, to look for how we can continue to expand, how we can continue to improve. So when we're looking at the story of our day, we're looking for ourselves as the protagonist, we're looking for the antagonist, and we're looking for the conflict. What is that conflict? And I would actually challenge us to say, how are we going to resolve this conflict by the end of the episode? And how can we make that episode 1 day long? I think this is the goal. If we're talking about where a master is, they do not experience conflict in the way that we do. They don't experience hurt. They experience hurt, but it's somehow part of them remains untouched. And when we think of ourselves as protagonists, what we're doing is we're depersonalizing a little bit. We're just taking one step back and saying, you know what? This is not me. This is a part that I've been asked to play. Even as the soul that was Lahiri also played the soul that was Kabir, and also played the soul that was any number of divine incarnations, so too are we only playing a part. And it's a little hard for us. We can't remember all of our past lives. It's hard to remember the immortal soul. So that's why 1 day chunks. Today, who are we going to be? What conflict is going to come to us and how are we going to respond? How is the character that is Aryavan, the character that is Mona, the character that is Rashmi going to respond? And how is this going to end? Because we know that our lives cannot but end in liberation. That is the promise of the masters. That is the end of this story can only be liberation. So how can we find ourselves there? How can we get to the end of that story? What will we have to change? And it's interesting how often in these stories, these sitcoms that we watch sometimes, the goal is almost always internal. The person has to forgive. They have to let go. They have to apologize. If something bothers us, that means this is our story. If somebody, even if they do something that's totally wrong and we're totally in the right, if it bothers us, that means this is still our episode. We still have something to learn here. And by depersonalizing, by stepping back and seeing the character living this life rather than you, all of a sudden, we get to see it impersonally. And when we see things impersonally, all of a sudden, our heart becomes less hurt, because it's when our heart is at the fore that it's easy to nick and slice and poke. But when it steps back, when it sees the big picture, when it takes the macro view of life, that's when we're able to truly depersonalize and learn from the experience. Say, oh, he's hurt because of this. She is hurt because of that, that being us. I'm feeling pain because I had a belief about how this person should treat me. But actually, I am just a spark of the divine. I am just a bubble of laughter. And my part in this story is to forgive, is to send love, is to not take it personally so that I don't have to do this cycle again tomorrow. So I don't have to be born another day, another year, another lifetime. Master said that if we want to change, we could change in an instant if we could direct enough willpower. So by depersonalizing, by stepping back, by watching the film of your life, we can start to do that. We can start to cut the cords that bind us to all of these different challenges, all of these different pains and sorrows of life. I'd like to end by reading the poem of Kabir again once more, because now that we have the context of seeing the big picture, let's hear how Kabir narrates this and illustrates this on the grandest scale. Between the poles of the conscious and the unconscious, there the mind has made a swing. Thereon hang all beings and all worlds, and that swing never ceases its sway. Millions of beings are there. The sun and the moon in their courses are there. Millions of ages pass and the swing goes on. All swing, the sky and the earth and the air and the water, and the Lord himself taking form. And the sight of this has made Kabir a servant. So let us all become servants of this cosmic dream by seeing it for what it is, by zooming out, by taking the macro view. Anytime that you're feeling a particular pain or struggle, like the goalie is right in front of your face, remember, just zoom out, even visualize the world, visualize the Milky Way galaxy. Remember how small this moment is, not to make you feel bad for feeling so hurt, not to make you feel insignificant in the sense of not being important, but every moment, every challenge, every pain is insignificant until we treat it as an opportunity to learn for ourselves, to understand what all of this is. The millions of beings on this swing will continue to be born and die and be reborn, but we have the opportunity, thanks to our masters, to step back, to see it all as a cosmic motion picture, as Master used to say, and to find our freedom. Joy to you. So let's just end our satsang here together by sitting up straight once more. We'll end by sending out these we'll send out healing prayers to the world. You can close your eyes and let's actually picture the world, zooming all the way out from whatever neighborhood of whatever town we live in. Visualize farther and farther out all of those lives, billions upon billions of lives, with their dramas, their challenges, their successes and failures, their likes and dislikes. And even as we wish for ourselves to be able to watch the film of our lives impersonally, to see it all as a dream drama, let's also pray that all beings, even for a moment, get to experience that perspective, that smriti, that memory of who they actually are. Every single being in this world is us, a spark of the divine that's trying to find its way home. Let us pray that Divine Mother heals all souls of the delusion that they are separate, that they are alone, and reminds them who they really are. Please pray with me. Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Manifest your healing love in all bodies, in all minds, and in all souls. Rub your hands together, bringing that love into the hands, feeling it pouring from your heart, from the cosmic heart behind all hearts, and pouring out into the whole world. Oh. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Thank you all. It was a joy to be with you. And Jai Guru.